This is the Connected Baby podcast series, sponsored by you, the listener. If you'd like to help spread the message of the science of connection even further, then you can make a donation at connectedbaby.net/donate.
Welcome to the Connected Baby podcast, where we explore how people are putting the science of connection to use in their lives.
Hello and welcome to our weekly Connected Baby podcast with Dr. Suzanne Zeedyk. I'm Gary Robinson. Our special guest today is Anna Newell. Anna is the artistic director of the Replay Theatre Company. They're based in Belfast. And host of the Belfast BabyDay, which is coming up rapidly on the 27th of September. Hello, Anna. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So lots of questions, and this one is probably the one you get asked most of the time, I would imagine, but I am absolutely intrigued. Tell me about theatre for babies. How does that work?
Yes, that's very much a question that I get asked. And what the other question that I do get asked, which is connected to that, which I know you guys won't ask, which is what's the point?
We wouldn't be that blunt.
They won't remember.
We wouldn't be that blunt, but go for it anyway.
But actually the answer to that is tied into the answer to how we do it, because of course they will remember, and in fact it's being imprinted on their brains as it develops. And you know, we're very much inspired by the work of particularly Suzanne in terms of that neuroscience of what happens to you in the first 3 years of your life and how it impacts upon how your brain is formed. And so we believe really passionately that it's crucial that some of those experiences should be creative, imaginative, musical, lyrical, soothing, exciting, thrilling, and all the things that the arts can be. We started making baby work in 2011. But in fact, the story for how I make that goes back a lot further, in that about 21 years ago, I accidentally started a large-scale women's a cappella harmony singing group in Dundee.
Loads of women singing.
Sorry?
Loads of women singing.
Loads of women singing, indeed.
Yes, I know them very well.
They were. I was working at the Dundee Rep as an associate director, and it was my turn to direct their community women's group. And it's been quite a fractious group, and we'd had a lot of conversations about, is it enough that they were all women? Is that enough of a thing to tie them together? And I'd sung in a group called Eurydice in Glasgow, Glasgow Women's Socialist Choir. And I suddenly thought, what if I take a load of songs from all over the world that work in harmonies, teach them to a group of women, and we make a kind of multi-narrative show around that. And we did. But then at the end of this project, they wouldn't shut up. And they were very keen to continue as a singing group. And in fact, they continue to this day. And I now have a similar group here in Belfast. And the two groups have in fact met and sung together. But sometime in the 90s, as part of International Women's Week, we were touring. We did a tour of workplaces that were predominantly staffed by women. So we sang in a hospital laundry. We sang at the checkout at Asda's, and we sang at a nursery. And the response of the children of all ages they're all preschool, to that kind of wall of harmony was really extraordinary, and that really stuck with me. And so when I came into Replay Theatre Company, and I brought with me a show that I wanted to make for 2 to 4 year olds, and then I was just really intrigued about how do we get even younger, and that response was just stuck in my head. And a lot of the shows that I make involve song, and so I thought what I want to start with singing. Let's make harmony singing right at the centre of it, because of that really crucial connection that the human voice makes, and just how music impacts upon us almost viscerally. You know, a beautiful harmony or a beautiful cadence just hits you in the chest. And I always just believe that babies are just little versions of us. So if it has that impact on me, it's going to have that visceral impact on a baby.
Of course, Anna, what the science tells us, as you will know, is that brains are really built to be musical. So what you're seeing in those performances is the science of connection brought to life. It really is the case that music connects in babies' brains in ways that might surprise a lot of other people.
How does that reaction manifest itself physically in the babies? So if you were to harmonise and you're singing in front of 2-year-olds, even younger, what sort of reaction were you getting? What actually happened?
I mean, it's actually it's really interesting the word that you use there, which pulling that apart, it makes me want to talk about how we make the shows, and that we don't do it in front of them. One of the things that we do, and again, really inspired both by Suzanne's work and by the work of people like Dr. Sally Ward, is we create distraction-free spaces by working with, we have this thing called our bubble, which is this big dome, which takes away all visual distraction, all oral distraction. It means we can introduce stimuli really specifically, and in one of the baby shows that's harmony singing and video projection, and in another one, our most recent one, it's harmony singing and it's interaction with little lights and little animals. But we work a huge amount with our performers, working really specifically on things like intensive interaction, so that whilst, for example, the score of the shows remains the same, how the performers interact with the children or with the babies is completely led by the babies.
So it's really relational work. Anna, I love that you said to Gary, we don't do it in front of the children. We do it with the children. It's a way of thinking. That's the whole thing about connection. It changes our way of thinking. The babies are part of the performance, but actually it's the same for adult theater too. The audience is part of the performance. So baby theater gets us to rethink what adult experience even is. I know that the youngest audience member that Replay has ever had is 4 days old. It's not 2-year-olds. It's children who are days and weeks old, and it still works. It's not a crazy idea. It's being built into their brains. Am I right, Anna?
Absolutely. And what also happens as well, I mean, what's really interesting in terms of those tiny ones, before I go on to say the other thing, is that our performers are so fantastic, and they've been really, one of the things that we've done in the build-up to BabyDay is we've been touring it around Sure Start, so we can go right to them, and we've been getting it to people who may not engage with the arts, may not be aware of attachment theory, but they'll come in and have this lovely connected experience, which is as much for them, and connects us as this triangle that exists between the performer and the baby and the caregiver. What our performers do is that they've noticed sometimes, because our baby shows are, one of them 0 to 12 months, one of them 0 to 18 months, but that sometimes the mothers of the very little babies, a few weeks or a few months old, will go, oh, maybe they're not really old enough, they're not really reacting, because they'll see older children having a much more visible reaction. And our performers almost preempt that at the end of the show and will speak to the mothers of the tiniest babies and going, did you see that moment when his eyes were tracking the little light? Did you see him reaching for this? To really kind of emphasize that that it really works for even the tiniest of babies. And in terms of the connection with the parents in that triangle, one of the loveliest comments that we had was whenever we're making shows, for all audience, but certainly for babies, we can't rehearse very much without our audience. So we would have our audience in every couple of days during rehearsal to try things out, but also so the babies can train the performers. But we did one of those sessions once, and after it, a woman spoke to me quietly, and she said, have you thought about doing this for mothers who suffer from postnatal depression? Because I really did, she said. And she said, I really struggled to connect with my baby, and I just found that experience really connected me to my baby in a way that I felt comfortable, I felt relaxed. And then there's all sorts of other connection going on in that when we first did the show, because it's only 20 minutes long, we put the start times about 40 minutes apart, but we had to extend it because people won't go away. Because there's this whole other part at the end of the show where the babies are connecting with each other, where the cast are doing sort of informal, intensive interaction, where the parents are chatting to each other, the parents are chatting to the performers, and there's this incredible complex web of connectivity that has been engendered by the show. And, one of the things the Sure Stats say to us is they said if we invited parents in and we were going to lecture them about this, they wouldn't come in. But once you've done the show, it opens a door for us to talk about attachment theory, to talk about the importance of connecting with your baby. And they said, it's a real catalyst for them to have those conversations where people have been on a lovely experience and feel connected in that moment.
Anna,
connect more.
What's wonderful is you can't see Gary's face at the moment. And you talking about a show for babies 0 to 12 months old, you should see Gary trying to get his head around that, because I think it is a really different way of thinking about theater, isn't it, Gary?
Yeah, I suppose because the language of, what is the reaction of the babies when you do this in front of them? That is the natural response of somebody who's not been privy to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it sounds fascinating. I think the burning question I've got at the moment is how did you, if indeed it was yourself, Anna, how did you come up with this concept? Has it been around before? Is it unique to the Replay Theatre Company? Is it something that's your baby, no pun intended?
There are a number of companies. It's still a very emerging form, but there are a number of companies across the world making shows for babies in lots of different ways. Some of them ways that I think aren't so great, some of them that I think are fabulous. There's an amazing company called Polyglot in Melbourne who I had the fortune to go over and work with, and all of their work has the audience right at its centre, and it's incredibly fascinating work, and they made an amazing baby show. So the particular ways that we make shows and the particular strategies that we use and how they come together with the particular art forms that we choose, I guess, is unique to us. But baby theatre, as I say, it is an emerging form, but still emerging enough that a good number of people who actually work in theatre, and sometimes even people who make shows for older children, go, "Nah, don't get it. Don't get how it works. Don't get why you would do it."
But once they've seen it and they've experienced it, the penny drops.
Yeah. One of the things that we do a lot now, both for that work, but also we have a whole program of work that we make for children and young people with profound and multiple learning difficulties that uses some of the same strategies. And we actually have little videos of our work online, because otherwise it's sort of talking about it in the abstract. People do struggle to get their heads around it because it is so unusual and so unknown.
I am still I'm still visualising this. So I'd be lying to you, Anna, if I said in my head, yeah, I get it. And I don't mean that with any disrespect, but I'm just trying to visualise.
It's why it's so powerful to help other listeners out there, because some of them will be thinking exactly what you're thinking, Gary. What? I don't get it.
And have the Northern Irish audiences adopted this? Or are they a little bit like me? No, certainly not cynicism, but trying to visualise it. And when they go, yeah, do you know what? I get this completely. Is that the reaction?
We have found that since we started doing baby work, and I'm sure, there's a fabulous company who Suzanne's worked with called Starcatch in Edinburgh, and I'm sure their experience would echo ours. But I know that since we started doing the baby work, we are harassed to within an inch of our life on Facebook by parents going, "When is it coming back out?"
Really? Yeah.
And part of that was the drive behind BabyDay. And basically it was us inviting the entire city and many other arts organisations and venues to join in, which they have, which is fantastic.
So with the productions, do you go to the community or do they come to you?
It's a real mixture. Certainly with the last baby show that we did, we say we work with these portable performance spaces for two reasons. One of them is because it enables us to completely keep the production values the same. So, for example, the baby show that we took off Broadway is exactly the same show in every detail that Sure Start Mum saw in a church hall in Derry. And the show Tiny that we're taking round hospitals and the townships in South Africa 6 days after BabyDay is exactly the same show that goes to art centres. And that's really important to some of our community audiences, that they know that's what they're getting. But with one of the things with BabyDay that was really important to us was that it was crucial to us that families who might not engage with the arts wouldn't think, well, that's another arty thing in the city centre that's not for us. Mm-hmm. And so a year before BabyDay was even mentioned to anybody, we started working with those Sure Starts. And what we said to them was, rather than me going out and going, hello, I'm from a theatre company, would you like to be part of my project? We said, we have this show. It's all tiny. It's quite small in its space. We can bring it directly to you. We can go to you on your terms, on your turf. And turf is even more of an issue here than it is anywhere else. Yeah. And so we played it in medical centres, we played it in Sure Start front rooms, we played it in church halls. And the other thing about the distraction-free spaces, which we also use for our work with profound and multiple learning difficulties, is, as I said before, that it removes all the visual and oral noise. And in fact, whilst parents and adults can do that filtering that you can't do if your cognitive processing is slower, either due to age or disability, but your brain is working. So it's no surprise that when the parents come into the tent and all that is removed, they don't know why, but they feel relaxed.
And can I just highlight, in the middle of all that wonderful stuff you just said, Anna, she's got baby theatre that's being done in Sure Start centres and church halls, which are ordinary spaces, that Replay is also doing on Broadway. That's astounding, that because people often think, well, you might do something sweet in Sure Start centres and the important stuff is going on Broadway, but it's the same stuff.
That is so key to us. And our audiences know that. Our Sure Start audiences know that the work that they're getting is going to South Africa and has been to Broadway.
And what effect...
And what that says to them about how important they are to us is enormous.
What effect did it have on the New York audiences?
We sold out really quickly, and we had a great response. I mean, I think it was very similar to the response that we get here, although the responses are always incredibly different and incredibly, and that's the whole point in the show. I mean, one of the things we do at the beginning of the show is there's a bit of an introduction that kind of says, relax. Says, if your baby's just sitting and watching on your knee quietly, and some other babies are reacting massively, that's fine. That's how your baby's choosing to engage with it. If your baby's making loads of noise, don't feel embarrassed. However the babies choose to engage with it, as long as they're not hurting themselves or other babies, that's what's important. That they lead the interaction, they decide how to engage. They're not told to clap their hands. They're not told to make noises. They're not asked to repeat anything. And, that's with the intensive interaction. We are copying them rather than the other way around. I mean, the one thing that I do think is going to be extraordinary in terms of a different culture is playing the show in township hospitals in South Africa. I'm enormously excited about that. I cannot begin to imagine how that's going to be.
And do they come to you based on your reputation, or is this something that you go to them with and go, hey, here's an idea?
In terms of
taking the show. So does somebody from New York say to you,
yes,
listen, I've heard about this, it's fantastic, I've seen it, come to us?
Yes, well, they were slightly different, the two of them. With the New York one, what happened was the programmer from the New Victory, which is the off-Broadway dedicated children's theatre, came to the Belfast Children's Festival and saw it and said, I want this. With the South Africa one, which is a slightly different kettle of fish, we connected up with a children's theatre over there who make early years work, but not as young as babies because they've never had baby theatre there. And we came up with a proposal together that we put into the SAUK fund, which is funded by the National Arts Council of South Africa and also the British Council in South Africa. So the plan is that we go over and we play that show, but that we work with that local company and share ideas, and hopefully it'll be a catalyst for them to start their own Indigenous baby theatre movement there.
And let's think about this. It means that in places where life is really difficult, baby theatre is being taken in not simply as entertainment, but as healing, as ways of bringing families together. And once you get your head around that idea, you can think of other places that we need it. So we're all dealing with refugee movement at the moment. What if we took baby theater into refugee camps? Lots of people would go, that's outrageous. In fact, that's even insulting. What these people need are houses and safety. Baby theater is part of that. That's how it helps spread the science of connection. So that's
in South Africa, it's specifically that, in that what we're doing is we're playing, where we're setting up is where mothers and babies have been in hospital because the babies have been ill or they were sickly at birth. And by the time we get to the mothers will have been sleeping on floors and chairs to be with their baby. They'll be very knackered. And it's while their paperwork is being processed, they're going to experience our show, and it's actively going to be part of their the health professionals, their early intervention programs. So whilst they've never had it, through our partner theatre company they're already recognising that this could be part of a portfolio of measures that could help connection, that could be preventative, that could help build more resilient children, and that could help heal, exactly as you say, Suzanne.
We'll talk about BabyDay in just a second. I want to say to the listener is that if you hear a lot of rattling and banging going on, it's when Suzanne gets very excited about what Anna has to say, particularly when we've been talking about New York and South Africa.
Oh,
so
you mean calm down, Suzanne?
No, not at all. But it's just if you hear a lot of rattling, that's Suzanne getting very animated. And I just want to put that picture in the minds of the listener because it's a sight to behold. I love this idea of BabyDay in Northern Ireland. Belfast, one of my favourite cities in the world. I've had the pleasure of working there. I've got friends there. Tell me about BabyDay. How did it come about?
How BabyDay came about was that Belfast City Council and the Arts Council of Northern Ireland, about 2.5 years ago, they decided to launch this fund called the Creative and Cultural Belfast Fund. And they said, we are looking for projects that are big, that are bold, that are ambitious, and they had 2 key criteria that they had to hit. One was distinctly Belfast, and one was inspiring communities. And when you say distinctly Belfast, often people think about history, or the most recent past, or they think about geography, or they think about architecture. And I remember sitting in the room when they were launching the fund going, what about the future? What is going to be distinctly Belfast about the future? And I thought, because we talk about the future all the time here in really abstract ways, particularly at the moment when it looks like our assembly is about to implode. Mm-hmm. But a really concrete way of talking about the future is going, it's these little guys. What city, what country do we want them to grow up in? And by celebrating our tiny citizens and by trying to connect up the city with them. And I do think there is that thing that happens when, Suzanne will know what this is called, I've been meaning to find out for months. But there is a period between, apparently, when your baby is between 6 months old and 12 months old, when you want to change the world because you want the world to be a better place for your baby. And I thought I want to harness that. I want to do something that is about hope, that is about the family that Belfast can be, and that is about how arts at the heart from the very start can be utterly transformative in a way that nothing else can.
And 80 events in one day?
That's right.
Wowee.
It's amazing.
So basically how it worked is like Culture Night, which is something we have here, where, and it was about getting the city to take a collective leap of faith. So basically, there's 2 parallel processes. So basically, we started this conversation with the Sure Starts, which has gone through taking Tiny to them, doing workshops with them. We now have a few individuals who are our BabyDay backers, who are our ambassadors. We've done a pilot Expecting Something project with pregnant mums. So we have an ongoing relationship with them. And at the same time, I spent about a year literally speaking to 3 or 4 arts organisations a week saying, I've had this idea about BabyDay. Would you do something? Or would your venue host something? And we haven't, it's a small budget and it's mostly gone on infrastructure, publicity and the really strategic and ongoing engagement programs. So it's been about asking people to take that leap of faith, to offer, for organisations to offer an event, for venues to offer a hosting space, And we have all sorts of extraordinary individual artists and organisations on board. We have Northern Ireland Opera, the Ulster Orchestra. We have a multicultural organisation called Art Ecta. We have a disability arts organisation called Open Arts. We have venues all over the city. Again, it's really important that the venues weren't just in the city centre, and that the stuff that's out not in the city centre is just as exciting. So we have Little Bollywood, we have Baby Gamelan, and then we have fabulous ways that people have just taken the idea and run with it. So we have a young writer who has interviewed women in their 70s and 80s in East Belfast and is making a drama for adults about being a mother all those years ago. There's a local, quite well-known musician who's doing an informal gig in a cafe that's songs with baby in the title. My singing group here is doing a concert for babies. There's a chamber babies concert. And there's a group of students who I worked with in New York who said, we want to bring our show for 3 to 5-year-olds over. So they're bringing that. We have our womb room, which is a big immersive installation made up of sonograms and kids' drawings floating through it, responding to what kids think it's like in the womb. And we have our Sea of Stories, which is a sea of tents with balloons coming off them. And inside each of them is a beanbag and a story that's been written by a professional writer to read to a baby. There's no pictures. It's about the connection of the human voice to the baby. And all of the titles are inspired by the phrase, on the night that you were born.
And in terms of...
And that's just a little snapshot of a few of the events.
Quite a big snapshot, I'd say.
And if you listen to the enthusiasm in Anna's voice, it's Replay Theatre that has led this. But Anna Newell is the artistic director of Replay Theatre. The amount of energy and creativity that Anna has is, I think, amazing. And here's what she's done with BabyDay. She's taken Belfast, which is a city that we all know has a lot of pain and trauma in its history. And she's brought to it hope and healing through baby theatre and the science of connection. That's a wonderful combination.
Just before we wrap up, Anna, let's talk about the science bit, which is at the heart of these podcasts. How does connection build into BabyDay? How is connection? I mean, I suppose that's maybe an obvious question to somebody like yourself and to Suzanne, but for me, it's like, right, okay, how does this all work?
No, not at all. And it's what I've been really, really insistent about, and that all of the blurb about it, both on its website and on everything that's gone out, is that it is more than a family fun day out. And in fact, we have a section on our homepage called the science bit, which takes you to some of the neuroscience and quotes a certain Dr. Suzanne Zedijk. But the message is very much going out about the reason behind BabyDay, and it's in the official program inside the front page saying this is because what happens to you in the first few years of your life changes who you are.
Yeah.
So the science is really up front and centre with that, and we also have fabulously on the day, one of the other partners that we have that I didn't mention is we have the A&I Science Festival, and they're putting on a series of 5 little mini 20-minute family-friendly science lectures around babies, of which we're delighted that Suzanne is doing one. And in fact, the very next day, off the back of BabyDay, the Public Health Agency and the Belfast Health and Social Care Trust are doing an event called Big City Tiny Citizens, which Suzanne is headlining at, which is absolutely going, do we commit to the future? What can we do? And we're trying to invite as wide a range of people. And I guess one of the things that's come out of this that's extraordinary, this event on the next day has been organised by the Belfast Infant Mental Health and Wellbeing Working Group. And that working group, which is entirely made up of policymakers and health professionals, invited Replay to sit on that group. And I think that's extraordinary, and I feel really delighted and privileged to be able to play a tiny part in that.
And I love that day, which sounds really big, policymakers, that the day before, the talk that I'm giving is called How Gobbledygook Builds Babies' Brains. So it gives you a sense of the relation between big and little.
Well, Anna, I'm blown away. I think you and your colleagues at the Replay Theatre Company have, to use a phrase, played a blinder. And
Thank you.
and can I wish you all the best? And do you know what? I really hope it becomes an annual event. And do you know what? I also hope that it's something that other cities across the world will look at.
Absolutely.
And adopt.
I mean, I've already had individuals from Mumbai and New York and Cape Town say we want to do this. And actually, we don't want to do it annually. We want it to be a moment where people go, we need to change things, so that there's just more of this happening all the time, because, you know, Arts at the Heart from the very start is not just for BabyDay, it's for life.
Absolutely.
What a nice way to end. Anna Newell, all the best for the 27th of September, if you're in Belfast or indeed anywhere in Northern Ireland, or even if you would just want to go across for the day. I highly recommend it. So BabyDay in Belfast on the 27th of September. Anna Newell from the Replay Theatre Company based in Belfast. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
This was a GRC production for Connected Baby.